Okay, so this is a little kind of a demo tutorial, whatever, to show how to assemble the scope clock kit. Now this is OSC 7.1 I'm going to be using, but I'm going to be naming the components as they're marked on the OSC 7.0 board. So if you build an OSC 7.0, you'll get these. But if you're building OSC 7.1, you follow the assembly instructions. It'll be virtually the same procedure with slight differences. This one I'm going to set up for a low voltage configuration, so it's going to be almost identical to the OSC 7.0. Got the trusty laptop set up here for the assembly instructions that I wrote and I'm going to follow. Okay, so to start with the high voltage supply, we're going to add D1, which is the same on OSC 7.0, so that's what you're going to look for. And this is a 1N4007, and that is a 1000-volt diode. You don't want to mix this up with the 1N4001s because they're only 50-volt diodes. So get your readers out and make sure you get the right diode, or else it'll blow up. So I'm going to put this in D1. Oh, and I am not a certified solderer. I've never had a soldering lesson in my life, so I just do it my way, which is probably not too bad, and it's worked for me. But okay, and the second high voltage diode, okay, on OSC 7.0, that's going to be D3. And I'm skipping around the directions a little bit here out of order, but I'm going to do the same thing. On OSC 7.1, that looks like it's D2, but on OSC 7.0, that's going to be D3. So I'm going to put those in there. Get a little solder. Trusty soldering iron. It's a little bit carboned up, but it looks like it'll work. And this is how I solder. I just heat the connection up a little bit, run some solder on it. These are so small that it doesn't take much, and maybe the way I do it's not really proper procedure, but that's the way I've been doing it for 40 years, and I'm going to keep on doing it that way. And then I trim the leads off of those, pretty close. I don't leave very much lead sticking out. Okay, then on the directions, there's C1 and there's C4, the two high voltage capacitors on OSC 7.0, and like I said, I'm skipping around a little bit here on the directions. Doesn't really matter. These are 4.7 microfarad, 450 volt electrolytic capacitors, and there's a couple extra holes on here to allow you to move it around. I usually put it in there like that, where it goes in really loose but nice. Then I put it down on the board as tight as it'll go and bend the leads. So in OSC 7.0, this is going to be C1 and C4. Okay, I'm going to ignore that because it's probably telephone solicitor as usual. That's why I don't answer the phone. Nope, the wife talking to her sister. Still wouldn't answer it. And this is, I wonder if solder smoke is good for you. I hope so, because I've been inhaling it for like 40 years. Maybe it's chock full of vitamins. Anyhow, I'm going to cut these leads off like I usually do. Oh, and on the electrolytic capacitors, I should mention you're going to want to pay attention to negative and positive. They do have a negative and positive. Notice the negatives, they're pointing that away towards these big potentiometers, but it's marked on the board. There's positive and negative marked on there. Okay, so what's next? The resistors. Whoops. Just as graceful as I've always been. And so I'm going to grab out of the bin here. I laid the other parts out, but I left the resistors in the bin because it's pretty easy to grab them. And that way you'll be more entertained. And this is a 10 ohm, 3 watt, I think it is. And this goes in R1, it's the same one, whoops. The same on both boards. Okay. And I don't push this one all the way down to the board. I let it stand off the board just a little bit, so it's not actually making contact with the board, just in case. I don't want it to contact and short any trace under the board. And then I solder that in there. And trim it up. And then there's something extra I'm going to do, only because this is a 7.1. You won't have to do this on 7.0, but there's 3 low voltage connections here on the board. I'm just going to use the lead of this little capacitor to make these 3 connections. LV1, LV2, which stands for low voltage. Isn't that clever? Okay. Wouldn't want it to lack for solder. It's cheap and plentiful. Make LV3. Okay. Like I say, this is only because I'm doing the low voltage configuration on OSC 7.1. If it's OSC 7.0, you won't have any of those. So you don't even need to listen to that part. Okay, now let's see. We got D1, R1. Got both the high voltage diodes crashed. Okay. The next thing I have on those were a little out of order, like I said, but doesn't really make any difference. They'll end up in the same place. The next thing I got on there is these half watt potentiometers, and I always take my needle nose pliers and bend the lead straight on those. I don't really know why. I just enjoy doing it. And these here, they're marked 105. That's going to mean 1 0 and 5 zeros, which means 1 million or 1 meg. And I usually put those in these 2, I don't know if you can see that close from this, but these 2 holes here and that one. And first one, this is the one that powers the anode, is pretty straight. And again, it's okay if they stand off of the board like this, as long as the leads are soldered in there. Now on this one, okay, I'm doing something I told you not to do. Bad me. The wiper terminal, I usually put in the directions not to solder that, only because you're gonna want to solder a wire in there later, and you don't want that hole to be plugged up with solder. Now I've gotten in the habit of taking a little touch of solder and tacking it down anyways. If you can do that without filling the hole up with solder, then good for you. And the next one is another 105. This is the focus pot. And I usually put it in these two holes here, going that a ways. And might have to bend the wiper just a little bit, the lead of the wiper just a little. And I usually try to make it pretty straight with the other one for looks and just so it doesn't short. Okay, solder that boy in there like that. Again, you don't need to solder the wiper. I'm just tacking it. And now 50K, which is 503, means 503 zeros, 50,000 or 50K. And again, I put them in there. There's a couple extra holes. I just make it fit where it looks good. And you notice there's a little bit of space in between these. And that's the way it goes. And I didn't exactly follow the directions there. Okay, or maybe I did. Those three pots, okay. Then there's a 470K half watt, which I'm going to grab from the bin here. Okay, that's yellow, purple, yellow. And this goes in R3 on the OSC7.0. And you're going to notice this is a little bit heavier duty, a little bit bigger than the other resistors, most of the other resistors in the kit. And again, I don't force the things all the way down on top of the board. I just lay it on there and let it lightly touch. Because some of these resistors, even if they have paint on them, there's always a possibility, especially with high voltages, they could touch the trace on the board. Even though it's solder masked, high voltage can do weird things. And it could actually short through the paint, through the solder mask, and short the resistor. So there's that. That's R3. Okay, and then the next item I have on there is the neon bulb. I think they call these NE2. I don't know why. I don't really care why. So a little neon bulb goes in that little spot there, marked neon. I usually solder these on the top. Seems to be easier because if I turn the board over, it's probably going to fall through. So then I cut the leads off like so. Then recite the magic words. The next one is R37. 10 meg, which is on here. Is also a 10 meg. Just grab one of those from the bin. Thank you, my faithful companion. Oh, I have a silent partner here with me. He goes by Pig, so I just call him Pig. So, put that in what would be R37 on OSC7.0. Again, just snug it down there, but it does not have to sit all the way down on the board. Bend the lead, bend this lead a little bit away from this row here, just to make sure it's not get too close to that, so it can't short. Okay. needs off. And then, okay, the fuse. Now the fuse that comes with the kit, for an OSC 7.0, it's going to be a 500 milliamp or half an amp, and they're solder in fuses. If it's OSC 7.1, it's going to be a 1 amp or maybe a 2 amp fuse, depending on which the transformers. Actually, it's going to be more like 1.6 amp, I think. It's a little bit bigger. The solder in fuse is just easier to use. I know if it blows, you got to desolder it or cut it out. You got to solder a new one in. But if you do it right, it won't blow. It's basically just there for safety, just in case, just a precaution. So probably won't blow. If you really want to, you might try to find a way to get a fuse holder in there. It's up to you. This is what comes with the kit. Okay, the next item is this little jumper. Okay, and this is not necessary unless you plan on taking this thing to another country with you. In the US here, we're on 120, so I'm going to put it with the jumper on this side. If you don't ever plan on taking this thing anywhere with you, and you can just solder a jumper wire there for the appropriate voltage and leave it that way. I always put this in because I don't know where I'm going to be shipping these to. These ship all over the world. And or you never know. You might build it and you might want to sell it one day to somebody in another country, and they could easily change it over. So there you go. Okay, then in my directions, I got the black and the white wire. I'm building it myself. I don't usually bother with this part because I know it's all going to go okay. But for demonstration purposes, I'll plug this in, demonstrate it, try to do it the way I've described in my directions. Okay, there's a stripped end in the white. Here's the black one. Now I understand in other countries that there may or may not be a hot and a neutral. In the US, we have that. And most of our cords now are polarized as far as I know. The white will be the wide blade. So if you have an electric cord, now I usually pre-drill a couple holes in here to make it easier to insert the wire through, because this is the way I like to do it. You don't have to, you do it your way. But I like to put the wire through the hole and solder it underneath. Right, put it through the hole, right the end of the insulation, so that on top of the board it's insulated, and underneath it solders to this row of pads here. Once or twice, I think I've had some say, why you put so many pads or whatever. Well, why not? Because it makes it easier. It's easier to solder to. You can get a bigger wire soldered to it. You have more choices. So there's that. Pretty decent. And then the white one. Okay. White one goes into this hole. Oh, it's marked neutral, by the way. And the black is marked hot. Okay, that looks pretty good. I don't want there to be any, since this is stranded wire, the last thing I want is for one of those little strands to be sticking up and short to something, and then when I plug this thing in, kapowie. I don't want that to happen. Sometimes it does anyway, but that's okay. So I like to put plenty of solder on these. I don't like there to be anything that could possibly be hanging loose or anything. So, there's that. Okay. Like I say, I usually don't do this when I'm building them myself. I just whip the whole thing up because I've built, I don't know, like 50,000 of them or something. So, grab a couple wire nuts or twisters or whatever you want to call them. And I'm going to take the end of this fine electric cord that I have used many times. Put that white to white there. Connect that. I like doing it this way because I can always disconnect it. That's another reason I don't usually put this up. Then it will just be in my way when I'm trying to solder the rest of it. Okay. And this, in the directions, I'm reading my own directions. Okay. This is on. This has to be oh yeah. I'm gonna need to put the transformer in there too. So let's do that. Okay. This is the transformer that comes with OSC 7.0 and also with 7.1, but you also need a high voltage, a bigger transformer. Okay. So this is what I do with it. So for me, I'm going to set mine about right here. That's how it's that's just how it's going to set because of the way I build it in the enclosure. So I'm going to trim these leads off about there. You can leave them long if you want, depending on how you're going to build your enclosure. You may want long leads, so you can mount this transformer somewhere else. Keep those for later because they look delicious. And then these blue and green are the secondaries. Okay, and I'm going to trim them about there for now. I usually do. Ooh, those will make a nice snack for later. Now, let's hook up the primaries. I'm going to strip a little bit of insulation off of the end of these so I can go through the holes. I've also pre-drilled holes in these, in the board for these wires to slip through, and usually works pretty good. Okay, while I'm at it, I'm just going to strip a little bit off of the tips of the secondaries too. Okay. And boy, if you're watching this, you must be really, really bored. Okay. All right. So now, look, starting from one end, and I don't know what I got. What do I got in the directions? Black, red. Okay. Red primary goes and transformer. Seeing if I can follow my own directions. Maybe not. Yeah, there it is. Okay, transformer. Well, I got red, but I tell you, doesn't really matter. So I'm going to start with the black. The only thing that matters is this transformer has dual primaries. Red and black is one, the other red and black is another. So I'm going to put the black through this first one here. And if I can do this the way that my fingers shake, then I know you can do it somehow. These ones are bigger than the secondary, so I try to twist them and thread the needle. That's pretty good. Okay. This is how I do it. You do it your way. You don't, you know, electrically it's not going to make any difference whether it's on the top of the board or the bottom. This works better for me. I put it through and solder it on the bottom. But that's okay. You do it your way. That's what makes the world go round. Okay, now. Okay, the next one is red. So notice I'm going to the very next wire. I don't need to test any of these. You can. I suggest you do. Get yourself a handy dandy trusty little digital multimeter. Test these. I honestly forget what the ohmage is. This one's going through that hole there. Now on the OSC7.0, these are going to be under the word primary. Both of these. This one and the next one, which is going to be the other black one. Okay. Solder him in place. What do you think, Pig? No? Pig doesn't say very much, but I mean, he's pretty quiet, but he's got an attitude that just can't be beat. I mean it. He's got probably the best attitude I've ever seen in a pig, or a silent partner, as I call him. So here's the other one. I'm also putting it in that row that says on OSC 7.0, it's going to say primary. So you notice that electrically these are essentially connected together, and that is because the two primaries of this transformer are connected in series. Okay. Don't ask me why. Okay, and the last one, the other red one. So black, red, black, red. You can do it red, black if you want. It really doesn't make any difference. Only the colors of the insulation on the wires. It's two primaries. Okay, so this one is going to this one here, which should be marked. And it's actually got 240 volts AC stamped over top of it, because that is what's going to be there if you test it. Don't need to. I'm not suggesting you do test it, but that is what's going to be there. Okay, so that's the primary. So now this thingamabob can sit like that. Okay, then you got the secondaries. And this is the easiest way for me to do it, is turn it over, start with this first one. In this case, it's green. It's going to go green, blue, green, blue. You can go blue, green if you want. Just make sure you get those guys in the right order. Yeah, that's one little hair sticking out there. Okay. These are a little bit thinner, so a little bit easier to get them all the way through the hole, down to the insulation. Bend it over. Solder it to this pad. Okay. Kind of like that. So So the next one's a blue one, the blue one next to it. I am quite sure you are smart enough to figure all this out and you understand what I'm talking about. But just thought it would help to do this. I know I've had people do this before and I'm like, yeah, thank you, that helped. It does help. You know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I don't even know what a video is worth. So, alright, on to the next pair. Get them out of the way. This might be a little bit different configuration depending on how you want to do it. If you want to try it a different way, it's your thing. Do what you want to do. But don't ask me to sanction it. Okay. Okay, and flatten that out. Ain't this exciting, pig? I mean. Almost as exciting as the time we stole Uncle Ernie's glasses and put him in a room full of angry porcupines. You remember that, pig? Oh yeah, that was funny, man. Okay. Okay. So that one. And there we go. You might think I'm crazy, but it helps. And, okay. Alright, so now we got our transformer hooked up. These don't come in the kit, but it is something I kind of like to do, especially since I usually assemble the whole thing before I put these wires on here. I'm just going to take the wires of the primary, put one of these little miniature zip ties around here. You can get them at Walmart for like $1 a pack or something. And because that way you keep flipping it over and over, back and forth, putting the rest of the stuff on, and hopefully it won't, you know, how do you say it? How it won't make the wires fray loose from the board. Okay. Let's put it kind of like that. Right then. Okay. Alright. Now, I'm going to plug this thing in, man. And nothing's going to happen yet, I hope. On the business end of this beautiful, luxuriant electric cord. There we go. Nothing happened. That's good. Now, what do I got in the directions here? Okay, the temporary jumper. Do not solder. Alright? You want to be careful with this. I'm crazy, but you might want to be a little careful. If you look at my diagram, it's this one here in the relay, and this one here. Yeah? See that neon bulb lighting up? That's, I mean, you can, if I can get this to stay here. Looks like it. Take out the little DMM here. That stands for digital multimeter, son. And turn it on, set it on 1,000 volts. And here's a quick and dirty way to do it. You can put your negative test lead on this one here, and your positive on this one here. And you get 646, 7, 8 volts, whatever. It's good. You notice my hand shake, it's because I'm a little nervous. Take that jumper out. Unplug it. And if you're not around a high voltage, then you probably shouldn't do this. Because whenever you do something with anything like this, you should be a little nervous, because if you're not real nervous, just a little nervous, because if you're not a little nervous, then you might make a mistake. I'm not saying anything bad will happen to you, but I ain't saying it won't. Now, if you want to put in the, I didn't get this ahead of time, but there's a little row here for a GPS port. Let me just grab that. Just a second. And refresh out. Okay, I'll get another. Make one up. It'll take a second. Don't get bored and give up on me. Where's my thing? Cut this off. 5 of them. Throw that back in there. Place for everything and everything in its place. And if it's out of place, I'll never find you. Okay. Now, it's 5. I guess you call that a female, I reckon. Put it in there. This one could be a little bit hard to solder because it wants to fall out, so you can do it any way you want to. This is my dumb little method of doing it. I'm going to try to hold it kind of like this and solder one of the pins. That didn't exactly go straight. Make it straight. Okay. This is for a GPS module, by the way. And then solder the other 4 pins. So if you want to get the right GPS module, you just plug it in there and set it on GPS. You'll need a little mini antenna too. I've got it marked on there. 5 volts, power, ground, TX. That stands for transmit. So if your GPS module's pins line up with that, you can plug her in and have a good time. Now this is, let's see, I'm going to build this one for a 2AP1 CRT. So, referring to my notebook here, it's 2AP1. I'm going to start with a 330K. That's 330,000. You knew that already, didn't you, Pig? Yeah, I know you did. And that is 330K, and that's going to go in what would be R99. Now this might be slightly different for the directions I give. I'll probably give you 2 even values, like 2 330s, or 2 220s maybe. This is a little trick I've figured out over the years. So in R4, I'm actually going to put a 270K. Now I know you're thinking, well, that doesn't match. But it, I lack the words to explain it right now. But just trust me, it works. Because of the deflection of the CRT being slightly erroneous. Okay, now in R6, yeah, they're the same. I'm going to put a 220K. Now, it won't hurt a thing if you put 330K, 330K, 220, 220, which is probably what I got in the directions. That'll be fine. Just do it this way because it helps slightly. It helps slightly with the resolution. So the next one, I'm going to use 180K. So you see what I did here: 330, 270, 220, 180, and I'll try to think of a way to explain it, but right now I just can't think of it. And I really just don't feel like thinking too much. So just trust me. It works. Let's go back to... I sure hope nobody sees this and thinks I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. Well, I am kind of crazy. I'm not crazy, you know what I mean? So, there's... I'm just going to solder one end of each of these for now. If I don't like my voice on here, I'm just going to dub some music over top of it, and you'll just have to guess what I'm doing. Don't you hate the way your voice sounds on video? Mine, every time I listen to it, even though I'm an old man, I'm a grandfather actually, but when I listen to myself on video, it sounds like I'm listening to some dumb little kid or something. I don't know why. I guess it doesn't really matter though. Okay. So there's other leads I didn't solder. That's only because that's where the wires are going to be soldered in for the deflection plates. I'll tell you all about it. Okay. I forgot to go by the directions. Okay. Anyways, if you went by the directions, we'd now be up to the part where we're doing the low voltage supply. So the first thing in that would be S3. Don't know why. I'm going to put the relay in. This is a 12 volt relay on OSC7.0 and 7.1. That's what I used. 12 volt relay. This is not as easy as it usually is because I usually don't have the transformer soldered on there. But I'm going to try to hold it and solder it. Or at least solder. Oops. Ooh, this is a little awkward. Try to solder one of the leads. There. Okay. That'll hold it. Have you ever soldered your finger to the board accidentally? I hate when I do that. Okay, and let's solder the other leads. Oh, by the way, the relay, you'll notice it only fits one way, so you can't put it in the wrong way, so don't worry. And this is a 12 volt non-polarized double pole, double throw, non-latching relay. And that's what it is. That's what it looks like. Okay. I'm going to play fast and loose with the directions here and just do it in the order that I usually do it instead of what they're telling you to, what I'm telling me to do. Sounds kind of dumb, doesn't it? Well, I never claimed to be the world's smartest. The next thing I'm going to do is stick one of these in here. This is a 2N3904 transistor. And I'm going to put it in here like this. It goes in Q7. I'm going to stick it in here like that. Don't shove it all the way down to the board. Oh, and this is an NPN small signal transistor, by the way, and it's just being used to actuate the relay. Try to solder these leads quick as possible. Don't want to heat that thing up too much because it is a semiconductor, and you could fry it if you hold the soldering iron on there too long. It might kill it. What am I going to put next? I'll put the rectifier bridge. The notched end is the positive, so that goes in that hole that's got a little plus next to it. And I stick it through to about there. Solder those leads. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wunderbar. You know what that means, pig? That's German. wonderful, I think. I don't know. You better not say it. Just don't say it. Never forget I said that. Okay. Now, next, let's put, I think I need to drill a couple holes for this. Ouch. I don't normally do it this way, but I'm only doing this for your benefit because this is how you're going to find it. In the kit, you're going to find these two holes in the back will be drilled out. There's no contacts to them. The two other holes are the contact points. The other ones are already drilled out, so they're all ready to go. And this is S3. Because these two leads are going to go in these two holes here in the front. Struggle. And then these two posts, I guess you call them, the supports, in the back there. They don't need to be soldered. They're just there to help hold the switch in place. So all you need to really do is solder these up here. And then I like to take the old needle nose pliers and bend those posts a little bit so they can't even think about trying to slip out of there. Okay, what else do I got in the directions? So that's actually in the directions, that's what I started with. The button, the relay, our filament. Now, here's what I'm going to do. For the 2AP1, it draws a decent little amount of current. If you got a European CRT like a DG76, it's probably not going to draw as much current. But the American CRTs, a little bit heavier on current draw. And since I'm going to be using a 2AP1, these are both 10 ohms, 3 watts, just kind of exactly like the one I used for R1 here. And you know that if you wire them in parallel, like I just did here, then they're going to total about 5 ohms. If you don't know that, then go back to school and study Ohm's law or whatever. I know it because I've known it since I was a baby, and that's just it. Okay, and what that's going to do is they're not going to get as hot because these are, well, our filament anyway, is to limit the current. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab me a piece of heat shrink tubing here and put it over top of this pair for beauty and for safety. Oops. And I hope I haven't knocked this thing. You can still see what I'm doing, right? Sure you can. So I'm going to put this big old piece of heat shrink tubing over it, and I'll be right back. Just going to grab my little heat gun, bend the leads out like that, and you'll see what's going to happen to this. Just wait. heated that up. First I spit on it to see how hot it was. Yeah, I didn't really do that, pig. I'm just kidding. You know I like to kid around. While it's hot, I'm just going to squeeze these ends a little bit. So they'll melt together on there. Now, look at this. Is this thing on? Can you see me? Okay. Now, ooh, that's hot. I'll put it in there like that. It's a bit awkward to fit it in there, but it will go into those two. There are actually two rows of holes there. You got a blister or a callus or something. Anyways, solder it in there. And our filament is going to limit the current to the filament. That's why I didn't make it any set specific value, because depending on what CRT you're using, you know, you can adjust it. You can, if you need more current to the filament, I don't usually read the current to the filament, I just read the voltage. On most American CRTs, that's like 6.3 volts or so. So there, and like my daddy used to say, it ain't the prettiest, but it's done. Okay? It really ain't the prettiest. Oh well, it's good enough. It'll work. I'll just solder that lead down, well, nah, it's not going anywhere. It's okay, pig. It's okay. Now, next, regardless of what the directions say, okay, I'm going to get a 2.2K resistor. 2.2. I'll just grab a few of them while I'm at it because they're cheap. Wonderful. Okay. And this is going to go in what is that? R38 on OSC7.0. And put that in there. Okay. Solder that in there. Like so. Might have to take a little break here in a while and go out back and have a little nip. We'll see. Okay. And first, I think I'll put this 100K resistor in there. Very big. That. These colors sometimes confuse me, and this doesn't even have the standard coloring on it. And I am profoundly colorblind. So here's 99K. Well, that's close enough. I'll just put that in there. Oh, if you want to read the value of resistors, I'm sure you know how to do that, but just get your digital multimeter instead of ohms, or whatever that setting is for resistors, and measure the resistance. And that goes in R14 on the OSC7.0. R14. Okay. Like so. While we're at it, let's put C6 in there. This is a 1000 microfarad 25 volt capacitor. And if you missed anything in this, then catch up, son. Pay attention. Okay, there's the capacitor. Solder that in place. You know, I had an electronics teacher in the 9th grade. Nice old man. I'm sure he's long dead by now. His name was Mr. Godwin. And he joked all the time. Great teacher. The best. And, okay, so that's done. So that was C6. Oh, make sure that's oriented the right way. Negative. Marked on the board. Negative, positive, all that. What are we going to do now? Let's grab some 10K resistors. 10K. Two, 4, 5, 6. Should be enough to do it. Put them in there. Well, starting with R33 in front of Q7 here. R33. I really got to go out back and take me a little nip to calm my nerves and take the edge off a little. Okay. Dear. Right. And you'll notice my workspace is beautifully organized. It's so easy to find things in this beautiful mess. Okay, where were we? Okay, let's put D9. I think that's what they said when I joined the Navy. Because you had this line you went through and they said, "Do you take drugs?" And I said, "No." And he wrote down D9s. And I said, "Well, what?" I said, "No." He said, "Move on." I said, "Well, wait a minute, move on." Okay, that was it. What are you going to do? You know. So D9, that's usually the best policy, deny. Do not admit. Do not confess. And I didn't really join the Navy, pig. I just made that up. Pretty good, huh? Not that it's a joke or anything. My dad was in the Army, though. Okay. So next up, R27. R27 is the 10K. That's brown, black, orange. Not that I know that by looking at it. I just know what bin I got it out of. Okay. What's next? This one, this capacitor. Okay, that's C22 on there. That is a 103. You know, that means 10,000. I don't know 10,000 of what? I think it's nanofarads. I always get those confused. Anyways, it says 103 on it. It's 0.01 microfarads. I do know that. Solder that. You notice I soldered it on top of the board. That was tricky, wasn't it? Cut the leads off. Okay, and then let's throw this transistor in there. Q8. Yep, Q8. Okay, and this another 2N3904. And if you lose these for any reason, then you can substitute a 2N2222 or any relatively low voltage or small signal transistor. I'm getting a little hungry, pig. I think it's getting close to dinner time. What time is it? Oh, no it ain't. Oh. Just trim those leads off. Okay. And I have gone far afield of the directions at this point. So let's see how far off I am. We're still on the low voltage. I think everything I've done is on here. It's just in a different order. Okay, so what do we do next? We need a 1K. We need a 1K resistor, pig. That's brown, black, red. I know that. I can't see it because I can't see colors, especially red. But I know what it is. So that is, oh, that goes in R29. R29, boy. It's the Chattanooga choo-choo. Isn't it? Or is it? Well, anyways, it's done anyways. Okay. Alright, and then another 1N4001 diode, and that goes in D56. Yeah, D56 on there. Make sure you put that mark going the same way as the line on the board. As I'm sure you know, diodes do have a positive and a negative side, so you want to get it going the right way, because if you don't, ooh, it'll be bad. Well, really not really bad. It's pretty bad, yeah. You want to do it the right way. Okay. Whoa, where'd that go? This is why my wife loves me. Because I'm good at making messes. And she loves cleaning. That's why it's worked out for so many years. Okay, I'm going to put this 7805 5-volt regulator in here. There's one thing I forgot. I'm going to grab me a heat sink. And one of these little pad thingies. Insulate it. And if you get OSC7.0, then you'll get this in the kit. Little tiny screw, little tiny washer, or whatever it is, spacer, grommet thingy, as I like to call it. And you can put, where did my 7805 go? Pig, did you? Oh, there it is. Sorry, pig. I didn't mean to accuse you. Now, you just take this little, whatever it is. I don't know what this is. Insulating pad, I guess. Put it over. Put the 7805 on top of it. Little tiny screw and little washer thingy in there. And a little tiny screwdriver from somewhere on a beautifully organized workbench. And this is, what it does is it'll heat sink the regulator. Make it a little bit bigger so I can tighten that boy down good. And it will also isolate it, insulate it, so that the heat sink won't be making actual contact with anything. You know, when I was a kid, my daddy came from Baltimore, and he didn't say sink, like kitchen sink, or go wash up in the sink. He said zinc, like zinc the metal with a Z. And you know, up until I was nearly 10 or 12 or something, I think, I really thought that's the way you pronounced sink. And I forget how I figured it out. My dad still said it though, up until the day he died. Zinc. Wash up in zinc. I need new tars. You know what that means? And this here is a war. I don't know how I ever overcame that. Like I said, my dad was from Baltimore. And he was a good old dad. Now, he didn't know a thing about electronics, pig. But it doesn't matter. You know why? Because it's not the knowledge of it, it's the methodry. That's what I learned from the old man. His methodry. His ingenious way of doing things. Now, this is Q4, right? Yeah, Q4. These are a little bit different because this is actually OSC7.1 I'm building. Don't ask me why. But you'll probably be doing OSC 7.0. If not, these components are named in the directions, and you'll figure it out. So this is one of the high voltage transistors. Man, I sure hope solder is good for you, because I've ate a lot of it. This is how I do it. I don't put it all the way through the board. I barely even put it through the board. See the little tiny stubs and leads? And I solder it on top of the board quickly as I can, because too much heat can be the kiss of death. There's not even enough to trim off, see? It can be the swan song for these little transistors, because inside there, you got to remember, that's just a case. Inside of it is a little microscopic little chip that's the actual transistor. Now these are two 10Ks, and there are 13 and R31 on the OSC7 board. I'm having so much fun doing this, pig, and I ain't lying. Ooh-wee! It's more fun than a set of Firestone tars. And uh-oh, here comes the kid. Oh no. Goodbye, peace and quiet. Well. Okay. there, trim those leads off. Real pretty. And I don't clean these boards with anything. I know the old timers, or well, I guess I am kind of an old timer. Some of the old timers would clean it up with something. I don't even know what it was, flux or something. Who knows? Who cares? It's not necessary. It's all on the bottom anyway. So what do we got next? This capacitor is C10. It's the one I trimmed the leads off of, but it doesn't matter. It's got positive and negative marked, so you can still tell which is which. It doesn't fit in there perfectly, but that's okay. The wise man once said to me, nothing's perfect. Never use that word, especially in construction. Never. You say, when they ask you how is it, you say pretty good. And that means it's good. Okay, next. We're really getting along here, Pig. This thing's, it hasn't gone too bad. My wife probably thinks I'm crazy down here talking to myself or something, but she probably already thought. Anyways. If you're married, you know what I mean. Okay, where's my LED? Where'd it go? I can't believe I lost something on this well organized. There it is. Okay. The short lead on the LED is the cathode. The long lead is the anode. That means positive. You got a little plus sign here, so don't mix it up. You can do it any way you want to, but for me, I do it like this. This is a blue LED, by the way. And these things, I don't know why, they're very fragile. So, it's like the transistors. That solder smells so good. You wanna you wanna well, you don't want to hold the soldering on there for any longer than you have to. And I let it stick up just like the transistors. Now, where's my thing? Where's my thing? Here it is. This is an old piece of insulation. I'm just going to take the scissors and cut off a little piece of it like that. And slip it over that, because these blue LEDs are really bright. That keep it from shining right into the eyes, maybe. And okay, what am I going to do next? I hope I didn't skip over something without telling you what it is, but this is R26. R26. And this is a 470 ohm resistor too. You gotta pay attention to the values of stuff in here. This is 470K. That's 470,000, and it's a half watt. This is 470 ohms. Period. 470, 470,000. Quarter watt, half watt. Okay. Don't want to mix them up. The results could be somewhat less than satisfactory. Okay, put that in there. I can't believe I made it this far without taking a break. I can't believe I've been able to stay focused for this long. Usually, I see a squirrel and that's it, man. Okay. Now, let's put in these two potentiometers, P6 and P7. They're the same on both. Okay, and these are what I call side adjust. They are, excuse me, I'll adjust my stockings here and my thong. Here. pinching me a little bit. Put those in place. Ah, that's much better. Ooh, that left a mark, didn't it? Okay. These are what I call side adjust. You can call them whatever you want to. And the ones you get with the kit may or be, I don't know, slightly different. The 3 holes on there are lined up. Okay, there's 2 sets of 3. There's no big mystery here. Those 2 are connected, those 2 are connected, those 2 are connected. That's it. So you can put this in these 3, you can put it in these 3, you can put it in these 2, and this one doesn't really matter. This one, they happen to be, the leads happen to be in a straight line. Some of them are in a Martian tripod or whatever. I'm gonna bend those a little bit, and so it'll stay in there long enough for me to solder it. Did you ever see that movie War of the Worlds, Pig? It's kind of scary. I like it though. Ooh, the heck was that? A little splinter. I think it didn't feel too good. Anyways, we'll get that out in a minute. And solder these up. And there, and there. Okay. Nip those off. Then, whoa, where did that go? And the wife will find it. Okay. There we go. Beautiful. That used to be a fighting word. Now, I think that's a good place to take a little break while I go lick my wounds and remove this splinter right